Hi everyone, Zachary here from Toronto Qigong. Today I'd like to talk to you about the three levels in your Qigong practice, or the three tools you would implement in every Qigong practice eventually. Before I get into the video itself, let's talk about the tools in relation to the training. So, when we train traditionally, you would generally focus on a certain tool and really master and refine it before you can move on to the next one, hence why it's called levels. Eventually, once you get all the three tools down, you can implement this flexibly in any Qigong set, and you would put them all together at the same time. This video in particular is going to be a brief overview, so every single tool or category can be really talked about in depth. However, this is just a brief overview just to give you an idea to start. So with that said, let's begin. The first one would be about posture. Posture is your physical movements and your physical skeletal alignment. In particular, the physical skeletal alignment is, well, are you in the proper posture in terms of, are you aligned skeletally in an optimal way? Because if you're not, it doesn't matter what type of Qigong you're doing, it's just going to be slightly off because your alignments are off at that point. In Qigong, when we think about physical alignments, I like to make an analogy to, it's like trying to create proper road networks in the body. The roads being actually the skeletal system, and then the fascia and the muscles and things like that. Because if we're slightly off on those parts, everything else is going to be completely off in terms of your energy flow. Now, can you do something about that? Yes. Just a slight correction in terms of a posture can make a big difference, I find, for most people. So things to watch out for would be, how's your back? Is it sticking out in terms of your butt sticking out, or are you actually having a straight spine? Your feet, are they slightly angled outward, or are they actually correctly inward and more square, facing straight forward? Small things like this make a big difference to your Qigong practice. And when we want to work on these postures, then it's mostly like, how do I get these physical movements optimal? Because it's, once they're optimal, we flow the qi in a certain way physically, and every movement will then build up onto itself. You can also use the physical postures just in isolation if you have a certain issue that you like to work on. So if you're trying to, for example, work on the lungs, you can do particular exercises to open up the lungs. If you want to work on the kidneys from a Chinese medicine standpoint, there's particular movements that focus on opening the kidneys. So the main summary I would use for this category is postural stuff is mostly, how's my alignment in terms of physical structure, and are my movements refined and flowing? Once I understand these two things, I can get to the next level. The next level then is your breathing techniques. Breathing is fairly simple. Most people would probably say, hey, I'm breathing already. Well, yes, you're breathing, but are you breathing optimally is the big question. In Qigong, we have various breathing techniques to get certain reactions in the body, because depending how much oxygen you're putting into your body, you're going to get a certain reaction. It's just that simple from a scientific standpoint. So when we use a default breathing, it's going to be natural breathing in Qigong, and that's when your belly expands on the inhalation, and then on the exhalation it sinks and relaxes. There's other breathing techniques such as incremental body breathing, which is opening and breathing into specific points, such as the acupuncture points, the organs, the meridians, or even various parts of the body, like, say, your eyes, your lower back, things like that. So they have a focus to them where you're breathing and guiding that breath. And then there's other ones like reverse breathing, which is you have your chest open. When you inhale, the chest puff out, and then the belly gets sucked in, and then when you exhale, it's reversed. So belly flops out, chest hollows. So, I mean, those are just some of the breathing techniques listed. There's actually much more. But the main point with the breathing is, when are you exhaling, when are you inhaling, and can you pause in between? Because your oxygen retention rate is important. You'll notice if you hold your breath, you can probably only hold it for about 15 seconds, if not a little bit longer. Typically, from a Qigong standpoint, we're trying to have a long inhalation, so we bring in the Qi into the body, and then when we exhale, it's a shorter exhalation, though that can vary depending on what you're trying to do, so do note that. The next thing with breathing is what organ are you breathing through? So is it through the mouth or is it through the nose? Because depending on what you're trying to do there, it's going to vary up the way your body reacts. So short summary of breathing. When we have to summarize when you can pass to the next level, I would say, well, do you know your timing on your breathing? And how long can you hold, or how long can you breathe in terms of exhalation, inhalation, and just stopping breathing altogether. Once you get that down with the physical postures in combination, then we would go into the next level, which is visualization. Visualization is a big area. There's different ways you can do it. However, generally, when we do visualizations, it's focused on really a certain focus point. And the reason for this is when we put an intention or active consciousness in the visualization, things get moving much faster because we have an active participation of the spirit in Chinese medicine, or this Shen, so the mind guide almost. And this active consciousness really can change everything up. So when we do that, then I'm going to be focusing in terms of visualization more on body organs, more on body parts, even what I'm trying to pull in. It could be a natural scenery that I be implementing. It could be even cosmologic, because this starts connecting to Chinese mythology. So there's various visualizations. They could be very simple things like breathing in a color. It could be very advanced things like you're holding multiple visualizations at once. It really depends what you're trying to do. But the main thing I would want to focus on with visualizations is what paradigm you're coming from. A paradigm generally is an idea that has a certain skew to it. And then with that, because it has a certain skew, you're going to be obviously going for a certain type of result. A good example of this would be Taoism, say Taoism versus Buddhism. When we do more Taoist techniques, it's much more body and visceral. So everything from Chinese medicine, from a Qigong standpoint, is connected to Taoism mostly. So how to visualize the meridians, how to visualize the organs, what colors to breathe into them. Things like this, that's more Taoist derived, versus Buddhist Qigong, which is much more about enlightenment and clarity of mind. So they're usually utilizing things like the meridians or the chakras and combinations to get a clarity of mind and peace of mind to really see everything. The visualizations are going to be very different for those two schools of thinking, never mind something like Confucianism or other schools in China, which are going to utilize certain types of visualizations. So with the visualizations, the main idea is, can you hold on to a certain image, and then can you work with a certain image to then connect it to your breathing patterns, and can then connect it back to your physical postures. So those would be the three categories of your Qigong practice, or your 3 levels. A side thing I would like to add is there's other things like sound therapy Qigong, which is used to, you make a sound, it vibrates a certain part of the body, and then you're going to get a certain result. Things like that as a technique usually somewhere fall in between the physical postures and the breathing techniques, but then can also go into visualization. So a technique like that generally can't fit into all 3 categories, but I would still view it as separate. But between those things I've discussed in the video so far, this covers just about anything you would do in Qigong in terms of your tool set. So when you're doing your Qigong and practicing, do notice where you are more or less lacking and what you can focus on. So if you got your physical postures correct now, see how your breathing connects to it. If your breathing is decent with your physical postures, then connect the visualizations to it, and then vice versa. With that said, if you enjoyed this video, do look into going to the website, being TorontoQigong.com, and if you really like this video, subscribe to the YouTube link below, and thank you.